There's something I had long forgotten. Only recently, when my mother mentioned it, did I recall those strange experiences from my childhood. The story goes like this. When I was little, there was a time when our house was under renovation. So, I was sent to live at my grandmother's house out in the countryside. While I was there, I met an older girl who was very kind to me. She would often sneak me away to play in certain places. But the strange thing was, those places could only be reached when she took me. If I tried to follow the same path on my own, I would find that the roads I remembered simply weren't there, no matter how hard I looked. I remember one time she took me into a thicket of trees. Inside, it was eerily empty, nothing at all except an old, tattered door standing by itself. She opened the door, and behind it was a room full of toys. I played there for a long time, and it made me very happy. The next day, I wanted to go back to that place, so I carefully retraced our path on my own. But halfway there, I realized the fork in the road that led to the door did not exist. I thought I must have taken a wrong turn, but this happened several times. Honestly, it was just incredible. I remember how much I liked that older girl back then, so I told her we would always play together. But oddly, when I mentioned her to the other kids, none of them knew who she was. They said there was no one like that in the village at all. One day, my grandmother seemed to notice something was off about me. I can't remember exactly what strange sign it was. Following my mother's and the village adults' arrangement, I was taken to a heavily visited temple near my grandmother's house. The people there told me to stay under the god's altar and not to come out. I obeyed quietly. As dusk approached, an adult came to get me and said everything was fine now. Then my grandmother took me home. After that, I never saw that older girl again. Years later, when I was 13, my mother suddenly brought me back to my grandmother's house. When we arrived, my grandmother had already prepared many things. After my mother was sent home, grandmother gave it all to the neighbors nearby. At home, my mother followed my grandmother's wishes and helped me deliver those items to the neighbors. When we reached one neighbor, an old woman from the same village as my grandmother, she looked surprised after seeing the offerings and asked my age. When my mother said 13, the old woman said, "These things should be given at a wedding. Why give them out now when she's only 13? Though I never fully understood what had truly happened. It was a very strange experience. Maybe I really was arranged to marry some kind of spirit or something. To this day, I don't know what I actually married back then. And as I grew up, my love life never went smoothly. Even now, I'm still single. This is an experience my father had while he was in the military. Now, I will tell this story from his point of view. Around 1981, I was lucky enough to be drafted into the Air Force stationed in the village. Of course, luck wasn't always on my side. After finishing officer training on the main island, my original unit was disbanded. I was then transferred to Kinmen. Compared to the army on the outer islands, the Air Force work was actually lighter. My daily duties were usually waiting for orders from the officers. Mostly, I assisted maintenance officers and technical advisors with aircraft upkeep and patrolling the runway. Mostly, I spent my time either running errands for the troops or patrolling the airstrip. I often paired up with my squad leader or other officers on bicycles. We'd patrol the runway and the various hangars. Each hangar had a single -person guard post beside it. One cold winter night, my squad leader called me out for a night patrol at around 2 o'clock. Wrapped in our military coats over pajamas, we braved the biting wind. Together, we pedaled to each guard post, checking for anything unusual. At the first hangar, everything was normal. No problems. When we arrived at the second hangar, we saw a newly assigned soldier sleeping on the job. My squad leader immediately kicked him awake. He scolded, "Sleeping on the job? Huh? Think you're too comfortable now? He'll toss you out to the observation tower if you don't shape up. Keep a good watch on the hangar. Inside is the retired display aircraft, just delivered today, ready to be shipped back to the main island tomorrow for the final inspection by the officers. If anything happens, the soldier had said. But now, things were about to go seriously wrong. The soldier standing guard snapped to attention, pulling himself straight and stiff in front of the outpost, not daring a single move. He was as tense as if his life depended on it. After a sharp scolding from the platoon leader, we pressed on toward the next outpost. Once we finished inspecting all the sentry posts, the platoon leader and I headed back by the same route. When we returned to the second hangar, we noticed its door was ajar just enough to slip inside. A faint light glowed through the crack. Approaching cautiously, we found the outpost completely deserted. The platoon leader peeked inside, cursing under his breath. Damn it, what's that guy doing running in there? If I catch him, he'll knock him out and toss him off the observation deck. I followed the platoon leader into the hangar. Inside were for World War I mini American propeller fighters, their paint chipped and weathered. Each plane bore pilot portraits and English signatures, silent ghosts frozen in time. Their engines, unrelated machinery had been stripped down. Soon, they'd be repainted and shipped back to the island to be deployed once more. We searched the massive hangar for the missing soldier. The platoon leader shouted his name angrily, cursing. Where the hell are you hiding? Get out here. But only his frustrated voice echoed back in the empty space. I said, Platoon leader, I think he'll go report this to the company commander. Good idea, he said, and bring the sergeant major with you. Just then, as if on cue, one of the planes jolted to life. The cockpit canopy snapped shut with a sharp whoosh, startling us both. Then, with a roar, the engine exploded into noise, black smoke pouring thickly out while the propeller began to spin. We both tried to rush toward the aircraft, but the thick smoke and swirling propeller obscured our view, making it dangerous to get closer. The sudden commotion soon caught the attention of others nearby. The company commander and technical advisor came running over. The advisor nervously asked what was happening. As we tried to explain, the engine suddenly stilled, and the cockpit sliding canopy slid open again, this time all its own in front of a crowd of onlookers. Then the hangar fell silent once more. The advisor and commander inspected the plane. They confirmed that its engine had been removed completely, only some exhaust piping remained. Meanwhile, the sergeant major on his way over found the soldier who was supposed to be at the hangar fainted outside, in a grassy ditch. We pulled him to his feet and invited him in. The soldier shivered as he recounted what happened. After his patrol, he had been standing at the hangar door when suddenly he heard several men speaking English, voices raised in excitement. Curious, he went inside to look. What he saw terrified him. Several ghostly white shapes floated through the hangar, drifting about as if alive. Shouts echoed around, but since he didn't understand English, he had no idea what they were saying. Overcome with fear, he tried to leave and report to the officer on duty. Unaware of his steps, he fell into a pit outside the hangar and lost consciousness. Listening to his story, the officers and technical advisor were baffled. None of them had encountered anything like this before. The soldier was sent to the military hospital for examination. Later we learned those four fighter planes had been transported from an unknown unit. Nobody knew where they came from, who the pilots were, or what battles they might have fought in. This strange episode reminded me of the other unexplained events my friends and I had witnessed, like engines less tanks that moved on their own, or gun barrels that turned by themselves. I wanted to say in closing, war is a cruel thing. I hope the brave pilots of those warbirds have found their peace. This all happened during the summer after I graduated high school, just before starting university. Years have passed since then, but I still can't understand what I truly saw. One afternoon, My parents had both gone out, leaving me alone at home. I didn't have a night shift that day, and planned to just lay around until meeting friends for dinner later. But the TV bored me, making me restless. So I decided to take a small risk. There was one secret hobby nobody knew about. I liked exploring abandoned ruins. During high school, I'd already been to the many ruins scattered across the city at least once. That afternoon, around 2 o'clock, I jumped on my motorcycle and left home. There was one large abandoned building in my city away from a bustling shopping mall, a place that once gleamed with prosperity. Once, it had been the trendiest entertainment spot in town, but after a devastating fire, combined with the city's commercial center shifting elsewhere, the crowd slowly dwindled. Soon after, ghost stories started spreading about the place, and people stopped daring to come near. One by one, the shops and venues shut down, until, in the end, the building became a scorched, blackened ruin. Maybe some of you have already guessed which building I'm describing. When I got there, I sneaked in through a narrow trail leading inside that abandoned structure. The whole ruin was eerily silent. Only the crunch of my footsteps over shattered stones and broken glass filled the air. I climbed the worn staircases, passing by deserted shops, their remains scattered across the floor, a litter of trash and debris whispering of past lives. I could almost picture the building in its heyday, vibrant, bustling, alive, and feel the scars left by the merciless fire. Alone, I reached the 8th floor. There, I found piles of discarded sofas, old jukeboxes, and great stretches of mirror walls. Shattered disco balls lay scattered on the floor, and faded posters of singers and stars from that era clung to the cracked walls. Standing at the edge of the floor amid broken walls, I could see across the ruins to the opposite side of this floor. The building was enormous, almost like several buildings fused together. It was divided into east and west wings. That day, I stood on the east side, gazing toward the same level on the west side. I was sure what that part of the building had been used for. The stairway leading to the west wing was blocked by large furniture that I, alone and a girl, couldn't move. So before, I'd only ever peered over from this side toward the west wing. But that day, curiosity got the better of me, and I wanted to explore the other side. As I searched for a path across, something strange caught my eye. I saw, moving inside the west wing on the same floor, a shadow low to the ground on all fours. At first, I thought it was just a stray dog, quite normal in abandoned places like this. I watched it for a moment. The shadow moved on, but then I noticed something odd. Compared to a normal wild dog, this shadow was unusually tall. A dog's height usually only reaches around the knees, yet this shadow, measured against the nearby debris, was about waist minus high on me. Odd as it was, I told myself it must be a large stray dog, or maybe I was mistaken. After all, the east and west wings were separated by some distance. It was easy to misjudge, so I shrugged it off and continued looking for a way inside the west wing. A few seconds after I looked away and looked back, the shadow vanished. Eventually, I found the stairwell leading down into the west wing. It was my first time stepping inside this side of the building. I was nervous but excited. While the floors were mostly empty, unruined, the west wing felt very different from the east. Not a scrap of trash littered the halls. Many doors were locked tight with heavy chains, no gaps to squeeze through. I felt disappointed. I had worked so hard to get inside, only to find nothing. Still, I wandered to one particular floor, though also reduced to ruins. The windows on that floor had been deliberately covered with thick plastic sheets. The place was especially dark, only faint outlines showing on the floor, a jumble of shadows that looked like garbage and discarded objects, piled thick. Heading toward the small patch of light, I suddenly felt something sticky beneath my feet. Pausing, I looked down, but it was too dark to see clearly at first. My gut reaction: could it be animal droppings? Reflexively, I lifted my foot to scrape the mess off on the nearby floor. But as soon as I lifted my foot, a chill ran through me. The stuff stuck fast, a thick, dark, gooey layer, like stepping on sticky resin. The texture felt foul, repulsive. I desperately tried to scrub it away against the floor. While doing so, my eyes adjusted to the gloom. Looking across to the well-lit area opposite me, I realized it was the East Wing's 8th floor, the very place where I'd seen the mysterious stray dog shadow earlier. Unease crept in. My heart pulsed quietly. I bent to inspect the floor where I stood and almost jumped in fright. All around me were footprints, and as I turned to follow them back along the path I'd walked, the dark stains I'd first thought were rash were actually countless blackened prints. There were too many to count, thick, dense. The floor was disgustingly plastered with those prints. Worse still, if they had been ordinary shoe marks, maybe I could have convinced myself they were left by other explorers. But these were all bare footprints and handprints, human hands and feet pressed straight onto the floor. That meant some strange person, or something pretending to be human, had been crawling around that floor, moving on hands and feet. I was scared out of my mind. My heart pounded so fast I thought it might burst. The thought of whatever it was suddenly appearing right in front of me sent chills down my spine. I ran without looking back. The stairway going down on the west side of the building was blocked, so I had no choice but to sprint back up the way I came madly, without stopping. Then I crossed over to the east side of the building and took those stairs all the way down to the first floor. After that, I jumped on my motorbike and sped away. I can barely remember the details of the running itself, but the fear I felt tracing through my veins is still vivid in my mind. As I ran, shadows kept flickering in my thoughts. At first I thought they were wild dogs, but those shapes slowly sharpened into something monstrous, something eerily human yet not quite right. Besides those visions, I constantly felt like something was right behind me, chasing me. I didn't dare look back until I reached the first floor and got on my bike. Once there, I sped off as fast as I could, leaving that building behind. That night, when I told my friends about what happened over dinner, they all warned me not to go exploring alone anymore. It was too dangerous. Then, someone suddenly pointed at my backpack. "Did something get on your bag?" he asked. I looked where he pointed. On the inside lining of the backpack was a dark stain exactly the same color as the stains on the floor inside the ruins. I was stunned. It had that backpack on the entire time I was inside. I never took it off, and the bag's inside lining was pressed tightly against my back the whole time.